What if the most terrifying horror movie ever was filmed almost entirely in blinding daylight? Midsommar hides cliff suicides from Norse history, ancient rune codes, and costumes stitched from antique farm linens. Here are 20 weird facts you didn't know, and the final entry will shock you. Let's begin with 20. Ari Aster still mourns his own cut, saying Midsommar feels like grief unfinished. Ari Aster didn't just deliver Midsommar, he delivered it broken. His original vision ran close to 170 minutes, but festival and studio pressure forced brutal trimming. Even the so-called director's cut, 171 minutes, wasn't the final word. Aster confessed he grieves the movie itself, much like Dani grieves her family. Imagine, a film about grief that's forever incomplete, even to its creator. The irony is chilling. What's stranger? Audiences think they've seen everything, yet hidden footage still exists, waiting. If the movie we know feels unsettling, how much darker was the version Ari never got to show? Next up at 19, critics dubbed it a black comic carnival of agony, daylight horror made grotesque. Horror usually hides in shadows, but Midsommar weaponized sunlight. Critics didn't know how to process it. The Guardian called it a black comic carnival of agony, while Rolling Stone called it sunlit terror. Some praised the brilliance, others saw cruelty dressed as art. Despite the division, the $9 million indie raked in $48 million worldwide. Aster said the comedy was intentional. The horror was meant to be absurd. Still, audiences argued in lobbies. Was it satire, tragedy, or something nameless in between? It's rare for a horror film to make people laugh nervously and then gag seconds later. Here comes 18. A painting of a burning bear foreshadows Christian's fiery temple fate. Blink and you miss it. Early in Dani's apartment, a painting shows a bear engulfed in flames. It seems decorative until Christian ends the film sewn inside a bear carcass, burned alive during the final sacrifice. Ari Aster littered the film with such warnings, subliminal foreshadowing hidden in plain sight. Fans later froze frames, spotting prophecies everywhere, tapestries that show the orgy ritual, wall art that shows Dani crowned. It's storytelling by hypnosis, where clues sit in daylight but hide from casual eyes. If a single picture foretells Christian's doom, what other prophecies did we fail to see? Sliding in at 17, Dani's apartment photo shows flowers, her May Queen crown foretold from the start. Before Sweden, before Haga, before her loss, Dani's apartment framed her fate. A photo shows her smiling, crowned with flowers. Audiences barely notice. It looks harmless. Yet it predicts her May Queen victory when she wears a crown of blossoms while watching her boyfriend burn. Aster confirmed it was no coincidence. Destiny framed in the background all along. The film's horror hides not just in gore, but in inevitability. Imagine realizing your fate has been hanging on your wall the whole time. When her photo blooms into prophecy, you can't help but wonder, what else was inevitable? Now at 16, beneath the blood and flowers, Aster calls it a breakup movie in disguise. Florence Pugh called Midsommar the most painful breakup ever filmed. Ari Aster confirmed it. It's a breakup movie first, horror second. He wrote it after his own breakup, translating relationship decay into cult ritual. Every awkward silence, every cold glance, every betrayal, magnified into blood rites and fire. Christians cheating in the fertility ritual isn't just adultery, it's the symbolic end of their love. Dani's smile as flames consume him feels cathartic, even justifiable. Underneath folklore and gore, it's just a couple unraveling. But the question lingers. How many horror films are secretly breakup stories in disguise? Coming up at 15, Aster kept his cult Bible hidden. Some actors never knew their ritual roles. Before shooting, Ari Aster wrote a 100-page handbook describing every ritual, rune, and law of the Haga cult. But here's the twist. not everyone on set was allowed to read it. Some actors entered scenes blind, discovering their roles only when cameras rolled. This secrecy made their confusion feel authentic. Imagine playing a villager but not knowing if your character worships the sun, kills outsiders, or sacrifices friends. Astor wanted that unease to seep into performances. It's like playing chess without knowing the rules, terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Now at 14, Danny's flower-crowned dress sold for $65,000, horror relic turned charity treasure. The massive May Queen gown, made of 10,000 silk flowers and weighing nearly 30 kilograms, was auctioned in 2020. It fetched $65,000, with proceeds donated to New York's coronavirus relief fund. The dress itself became a relic, part prop, part symbol of Danny's rebirth, and part cultural artifact of modern horror. Even in storage, the dress smelled faintly of glue and fabric dye. Fans called it a wedding gown for grief, proof that cinema costumes can become sacred objects. But if her crown carried such value, what might Astor's hidden ritual Bible be worth today? Sliding into 13, Harga costumes were stitched from antique farm linens, centuries in the making. Every villager's white tunic wasn't off the rack. It was stitched from antique 19th century farm linens found in Hungary. The fabric bore faint stains, hand-woven textures, and sometimes initials from long-dead families. Designer Andrea Flesch explained that this created a lived-in quality, as though the Harga's cult wardrobe stretched across centuries. Even the embroidery held meaning. Runes sewn in red or blue carried curses or blessings. Christian's tunic was embroidered with runes predicting betrayal. Imagine wearing your doom sewn across your chest while acting. It turned costume design into prophecy and gave every thread the weight of fate. Here's 12. Florence Pugh says Danny's grief scarred her even after filming ended. Florence Pugh was only 23 when she shot Midsommar. She said Danny's trauma, losing family, falling apart, rebuilding, followed her long after cameras stopped. For crying scenes, Pugh hyperventilated until she nearly passed out. She later admitted, "It was like therapy, but also like torture." Critics praised her rawness, but Pugh herself confessed she needed months to shake Danny off. Actors often let go after roles, but Pugh carried Danny like a ghost. It raises a question. When a role leaves scars, is the performance art, or is it emotional self-harm disguised as cinema? Next is 11. Midsommar was nearly NC-17. 6 weeks of cuts carved it into an R. Early test screenings horrified ratings boards. The sex ritual, gore sequences, and drawn-out suicides nearly earned Midsommar an NC-17 rating, which would have doomed box office sales. Astor and editor Lucian Johnston spent 6 weeks trimming frames. Less thrusting here, shorter screams there, toned-down gore elsewhere. The final cut earned an R, but barely. Behind the curtain, there exists a version almost no one has seen, more explicit, more violent, closer to Astor's intended nightmare. And if this version scarred people, how disturbing must the unreleased one be? Let's move on to 10. Jack Reynor insisted on full nudity, humiliation as Christian's final punishment. Most actors avoid full nudity. Jack Reynor begged for it. In the fertility ritual scene, Ari Aster offered modesty patches or camera tricks, but Reynor wanted Christian's humiliation to feel real. He stood fully exposed, surrounded by chanting villagers, during repeated takes. Reynor said the nudity wasn't sexual, it was punishment. Christian's vulnerability had to be total. That choice flipped horror tropes. Women are usually stripped and shamed in cinema, but here, it's the man. Viewers squirmed, not from titillation but from discomfort. Raynor's bold choice made Christian's downfall unforgettable, and changed how male nudity worked in horror films. Coming in at 9, Sweden's Fields. Fake. The whole movie was shot under burning, hungry skies. Despite the Swedish setting, Midsommar wasn't filmed in Sweden. Ari Aster chose Hungary for budget and geography. The flower-filled meadows were built on location, thousands of plants hand-placed to create the illusion of endless summer. Cast members remembered brutal heat, sometimes 100 degrees Fahrenheit under the relentless sun. Florence Pugh joked that she sweat more than she cried, which is saying something. Local farmers even loaned authentic tools and wood for the Harga village. So while the story is Swedish, the nightmare itself grew out of Hungarian soil. Ironically, Swedish audiences complained it looked too much like Hungary. Here's 8. Kubrick's The Shining and Black Narcissus both haunt Midsommar's dreamy camera style. Ari Aster didn't just write folklore, he studied cinema masters. Midsommar's floating shots and unsettling symmetry borrow from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The intense use of color and heat, meanwhile, nods to Powell and Pressburger's Black Narcissus, 1947. Cinematographer Paweł Pogorzelski even used vintage lenses to soften edges, creating a dreamlike quality. This is why Midsommar feels like a hallucination. It's crafted to mimic heat haze and altered perception. Every frame seems off, even when nothing's happening. By fusing folk horror with Kubrick's coldness and Powell's color obsession, Aster created a new visual language for modern daylight horror, sliding in at 7. The opening mural spoils the entire story in painted prophecy nobody noticed. Right at the start, an elaborate mural quietly tells the whole story. From Danny's family's deaths, to the trip to Sweden, to Christians burning inside a bear, it's all painted in sequence, hidden in plain sight. Most audiences missed it until their second viewing. Aster confirmed it was intentional, a fairy tale told before it begins. Folk art like this has roots in medieval Scandinavian storytelling, where whole sagas were painted on church walls. Midsommar hides prophecy the same way. Knowing this, the movie isn't about what will happen. It's about watching fate you can't stop unfold. Next up at 6, Simon's corpse mirrors the Viking blood eagle, lungs pulled into wings of agony. One of the film's most shocking images comes when Simon is discovered strung up, his lungs pulled through his back to form wings. That gruesome tableau mirrors the Norse ritual known as the blood eagle. In Viking sagas, enemies were executed by slicing the ribs open and spreading lungs outward like wings. Historians debate if it was myth or fact, but Ari Aster resurrected it for Midsommar. The horror isn't random, it's cultural memory, centuries old. That detail tied Harga cruelty to real-world Viking rituals, making Simon's fate one of the most historically chilling deaths in modern horror. Let's arrive at 5. The cliff suicides echo Norse Atestupa, the elderly leaping for honor, not horror. When the Harga elders leap from the cliff, many viewers assumed it was pure invention. But Ari Aster based the ritual on the Norse myth of Atestupa, cliffs where elders supposedly threw themselves once they grew too weak to contribute. Historians debate if it ever truly happened, or if it was legend spread to frighten travelers. Still, the image survived in Scandinavian folklore for centuries. In Midsommar, the act is filmed in sunlight, forcing the audience to watch every bone-cracking detail. It's not just gore, it's cultural history turned into spectacle. Aster used ancient rumor to create modern trauma. Next at 4, every white costume hides runes, like Christian's doom written in stitches and thread. The Harga cult didn't just wear white for purity. Every tunic, every apron carried hidden runes, Scandinavian letters with magical meanings, some blessed fertility, others foretold betrayal or death. Costume designer Andrea Flesch embroidered Christians' clothes with runes predicting infidelity and destruction. They were invisible to casual eyes, but real enough for folklore scholars to spot later. Even Danny's May Queen gown carried runes of rebirth. It means the story wasn't just acted. It was encoded in secret language woven into every stitch. Imagine Christian walking into his fate literally dressed in doom he could never read. That's terrifying design. Here's 3. The village Harga comes from a folk song where the devil dances teens to death. The name Harga isn't random. In Swedish folklore, the song Horgalotten tells of a fiddler who lures villagers to dance. Once the devil reveals himself, they can't stop until their feet wear down to bone. It's a tale of joy turning into doom, exactly the feeling Astor builds across Midsommar. By naming his cult Harga, he tied his story to centuries-old legend. The connection deepens the horror. The villagers aren't inventing something new. They're living inside a cursed folk song. The real question? If Dani became May Queen inside Harga, does that mean she's now part of the endless dance? Sliding into 2. The rituals mix real Swedish folklore with Astor's made-up sex and blood magic. Every ritual in Midsommar feels authentic, but not all of them are. The cliff-jumping Ättestupa and Blood Eagle are drawn from Norse tales, but others, like the bizarre fertility orgy, were Ari Aster's invention. He wanted to blur the line between folklore and imagination, so audiences couldn't tell where history ended and nightmare began. Even scholars admitted confusion. Some thought the sex ritual had ancient roots. In truth, it's pure Astor, written to disturb. That blend of fact and fiction makes Midsommar uniquely powerful. If you can't separate reality from invention, maybe that's exactly what Astor wanted. And finally, 1. Ari Aster wrote a 100-page cult Bible the actors weren't even allowed to read. The most unsettling detail of all, Ari Aster created a full mythology for the Harga in a secret 100-page book. It explained their language, their gods, their runes, even the meaning of every gesture. But here's the kicker. Most of the actors were forbidden to see it. Aster drip-fed them knowledge only as needed, keeping the cult's mystery alive even on set. The book remains unpublished, locked away like real scripture. Fans beg for its release, but Aster insists some things should stay hidden. Imagine knowing the answers exist, but never being allowed to open the final page. That was Midsommar's hidden side, 20 weird facts that turned sunshine into horror. If you loved this dive into cult secrets and film scandals, don't miss what's coming next. Hit subscribe and check out the next video waiting for you.